I'm Nilesh. Welcome to 3TB, a podcast where three techies banter. This podcast episode is a special one because this is a season finale of our season 2. And with this podcast, we are trying a few different things like we did a lot in season 2. We are going to do a kind of a video also of this podcast, and we'll see how it goes. This is a very home kind of setup, so you can see a lot of buyers around probably. But the idea is that we are trying some new formats so that which we may follow in season 3. So in this finale episode, we'll talk about seasons 1 and 2 as they were, and we'll also give a sneak peek into what we are thinking for season 3. So that is how we'll roll. So let's start with the section 1, season 1 and season 2. Samiran, you mentioned something very interesting about what went well or what worked from season 1 and 2.
So I think what was striking between 1 and 2 for me was I think we started season 1 at a much more serious note. We were like, we were talking about serious technology and, trying to, pass on a lot of information, which was kind of a good thing. But I think as we came into season 2, we started having more fun than we were having in season 1. So I think the topics reflected, the guests reflected, I think the subject matter and even the banter reflected. So we went to the India stack, which was slightly serious, but then we went to everyday tech, then we did creative arts and also I think that was a definite change, at least as far as I can see.
So for me, Samiran, I agree with you, but I think we evolved as people, right? Because the first episode or the first season that we were doing, we were really trying to figure and get our heads around the podcast itself. It was a first for us, right? So that made it a little more. We were also experimenting, saying, do we really want to do this or not? I think season 2 we've come of our own, and we've kind of decided, okay, while we want to talk about serious tech, our objective has always been to make tech drawing room conversations. And I think that's what we've been able to do much better in season 2. Though I think we can still make it even more fun and more better for season 3. And that's something we should watch out for.
So, one of the things I noticed, and we've been tracking on Chartables and all. So, if you remember in Chartables, the first time we came on the charts was in Jan, and we were number 6. But we had, Dirty Diana above us.
Correct.
But then when we had Chartables in July, though we were number 13, Dirty Diana was behind us. So I think we have kind of getting ahead of Dirty Diana was like a big objective for me. So I think I accomplished that.
So I think one thing I liked was what you mentioned about our predictions. So why don't we talk a little bit about another thing that went well, right? So let me start with my favorite topic, which is crypto. Then you can tell about other predictions. So we talked about in our episode on trends. We talked about crypto, and Sheetal was interested in crypto investments, and we were very clear about it that it is going to be speculative, and one should kind of the kind of money that you want to forget that you'll ever get it back, only put that kind of amount into crypto. And lo and behold, it has been a long crypto winter. All right, so we have seen that all cryptocurrencies, hopefully with Ethereum merged, probably Ethereum will show some comeback, but crypto winter continues. I'm not going to make any predictions per se, but I think we'll have to wait for 2023 to see a revival. I mean, that was one thing we predicted correctly. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think my favorite, and I think we've had our favorites, and our favorites have done pretty well, right? I was just reading up again on the metaverse, and there are so many people writing about what brands need to do to succeed in the metaverse because it's something that is here to stay. Is it as close as I thought? Maybe not. But I think a few brands have really adopted to and adapted to the metaverse. And I think that's a trend which is here to stay too. So metaverse again was something else that we predicted was going to become more mainstream. It has become more mainstream. And you're now hearing people talk about NFTs and metaverse and all in the same breath. And I think that's quite fantastic.
Yesterday, I went to my dentist for my annual checkup, and lo and behold, while he was gazing into the dark depths of my mouth, he said, "And what do you think of the metaverse?"
Seriously?
Yeah. So, I mean, just like crypto, I had to kind of tell him that, dentistry may not work in the metaverse, but yes, it is an area that you should look into.
Hey, listen, if I don't have to experience pain of a
Yeah,
dentist, I'm
metaverse.
happy to put it into the metaverse, okay?
So that was, so at least that tells you that people are getting more and more aware, which is kind of a good thing. I'm sure there'll be some good and bad, but I think with interest will come more use cases and stuff. The other one that kind of really, which seemed to be good due diligence, but really caught me by surprise, was when we were doing our season 2 creator episode, and we just said how streaming services are doing very badly and all that. But like kind of, it was just kind of an unknown and a dark horse that NDTV was actually making money and had been doing so for a long time. And I think maybe Gautam Adani is listening to our podcast because he immediately launched a takeover bid. So I thought that went really well for us.
That's true. I think the creator economy, again, that's another thing that's picked up really well, right? We've been talking about the fact that more and more the world of creators is going to come in. And I had a few people talk to me. We've been speaking to people, and I think that's going to become really big again, the whole creator
Absolutely.
economy.
Absolutely. And I think after the talking about the things that went well in season 1 and 2, let's talk about the changes and things that did not go well, or something we had to cover but we did not. And I have to pick the topic of Fiat 500. so being a car enthusiast, I think we wanted to speak about Fiat 500 in our art and tech kind of episode, and that is something I think plagued. That is something, the technology part, that plagued us in season 2. The whole platform was a bit choppy at times. We lost a lot of footage, or someone used to get dropped off. The track went out of whack for whatever reasons. So we spoke about Fiat 500. So I thought I should talk about it now. Hopefully that we get it right. So Fiat 500 E is what we were particularly talking about, and it's the electric variant of Fiat 500. And the reason for it in the art and tech episode was that every electric vehicle needs to make some kind of noise when it comes near a passing human being, because it is so silent, right? Any other thing, you'll hear the hum of the engine. So every other car does some dings and dongs and stuff like that, but Fiat 500e chose a music, a classical Italian music by a composer who also composed Godfather music for movie Godfather.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was very interesting, and it's a kind of a nice, interesting quirk that people are loving in Fiat 500e. It's making huge waves in Europe, and for all these things, it seems like a passion project in a way of the founder. So that was a bit on art and music and car and tech kind of.
The one person that I would like to bring back, the one person that I think we should bring back on our episodes is a man I'm a big fan of, Pramod Verma, and I really think that what we missed out on was DigiLocker and e-sign and things like that, and I'm hoping that we can invite him back to come and speak to us on that topic. So I think that's something that I would look forward to.
The one thing that I missed, in our episode with Amish, is I really wanted to ask him whether one person wrote the Mahabharata or was it a lot of people? Because, and not for any other reason, but the fact that it's such a complex text, the largest, longest epic in the world, with so many subject matters, that it is very difficult to imagine that even today a learned group of people can sit together and write it. So that is, I mean, he gave us some very interesting insights about our learned ancestors and the not so educated descendants. But this was, I really wanted to know his view on, could one person have written the Mahabharata? Because by timeline it's actually 600 years in one text. So that's one I really missed in that episode.
So I think on that note, I mean, with the stuff that went well, stuff that we missed, I think I believe that probably some at least an episode or two has to be dedicated to this whole art tech piece. And art, I'm talking about generally. We did cover music and we did cover some part of graphic and art and the books. Obviously, we had Amish, but I think there is a bit more on that part whereby it probably needs another episode or two. So we'll think about it in season 3.
I also feel that when we were doing the whole India Stack piece, right, I felt that there was a sense of pride, there was a sense of having come a different place that we felt, right? And I do think that there is so much more technology which is happening in India, which is something that we should and must capture. We're talking about India at 75, right? And India at 75 is much more than I mean, India Stack is a great way to launch it, but I think there's so much more technology that is going on in this country. I would want to, in the future, I think, cover a little more technology which is indigenous India, which has been something that we've developed and given to the world. Because usually, and we've said this when we've talked about India Stack, nobody thinks of India developing product from a technology point of view. But I think today there is so much more technology and product in technology that we're developing. So that's another piece I think we can do a little more about, and I would love to see
So I
that we
think
experiment there.
you are absolutely right in the fact that I think we got a lot of positive feedback and reaction to the fact that we did the Aadhaar episode, we did UPI, we did ONDC, and I think we were kind of one of the first few who covered ONDC, and we are seeing a lot more of it in the press. There is definitely a feeling of that okay, we've also done something. And the way I look at this whole product piece is that, why do we think of a product only as an Apple phone or anything? I think Aadhaar is a fantastic product. I think UPI is fantastic. And I think in our episode with Pramod, he did say that UPI in its architecture is crypto ready. So we are not professing for crypto, but the fact that if today we had, I don't know, CBDCs or whatever, it would be ready. So, it's super futuristic. We've done amazing work with Covin. We are doing, stuff with, in fact, for all the listeners, you just need to kind of keep track of all the stuff that we are doing, experimenting on the Digital India site. And, there's, things we are doing in the rural side, things we are doing for farming, things we are doing in the healthcare, education. I think Step as an organization is doing fantastic work with societal platforms. So yes, I think uh, then we should do more of it, and I think that will invite conversation, and that again brings me back to this lovely point that Pramod made, is that if that inspires just a few more people to volunteer, to contribute time, to give back, we would have done a great job.
I agree. There's so much more that we can do. And I think as we're doing more and more work, we really need to now come back and say, hey, what all have we missed out on? And I'm really happy to do the India piece. So let's put together a whole list. We have some thoughts, of course, about how we're going to bring in season 3. But let's put this list and see where we go. And I think we should ask our listeners, saying, is there anything specific that you want to listen to, or do you want us to experiment with something? We'd love to do that, right? So that is another piece that we should do. So let's take a short break and come back with our next segment.
Hey, hi, we're back with this section. As you can well imagine, we are wrapping up season 2. And obviously there is a lot of thought going into what we will do in season 3, maybe formats, guests, topics, how we can keep it consistent but yet varied from what we have done so far. But what we thought also would be nice and interesting is that, while we are away, we'll kind of leave you, our listeners, with, things to think about, ponder, follow, things that you should keep in touch with, things that are going to that is going to see a lot of progress and work in the world of tech, and also things that you should naturally be a little careful about, because tech does get a bad name, but it is also because of bad information or bad implementation or just bad execution. So there is both of that happening, and I thought that would be a good thing to do here, to just kind of leave that message. So Nilesh, I mean, what do you think that people should kind of watch out for or track closely, maybe in the coming 3 months at least?
So, so let me first start with something that I'm pretty sure people are aware of it by now, and I also got exposed to it. I knew about this scam. So one scam people should watch out for is happening on one of our favorite topics, which is UPI based scam, and that is on OLX or Quicker, right?
Oh.
These sites, the scam is not really issue with the platform, but if you are selling something, right, invariably there will be buyers who are interested in your products. And what some of them, the scam, how it goes is that instead of them paying you, they'll send you some kind of a QR code, which is a UPI address, and then they'll say that please scan this and the transfer will happen. But actually, it is a pull money transaction, not push. So the guy is not sending you money, but he's pulling money from you. So this is being used quite significantly. I've heard many people who caught it in the last moment on and invariably it was OLX or Quicker, where people are trying to shift. When they are shifting, they're selling their stuff off, and they are approached by the people to do this. The second area where this is being used, and again, it's not fault of UPI, but this whole QR code scanning, which makes it extremely easy. This whole push and pull payment is something you should be very clear about, right? And both are possible. And this, when I send someone a QR code, invariably it is going to pull a payment. So if I scan it, then I am sending the money, not other way around, right? But the way most of the user interpret is that QR code is just a depiction of your UPI address. So you are not really distinguishing between pull and pull, and you are thinking, okay, this guy is trying to send me money and he's just wanting me to scan, so you'll end up scanning. So don't do that. So that's one scam, the whole UPI scam. The second one, not really scam, is actually the whole BNPL aspect, right? Buy now, pay later. Now, I mean, it is a mixed bag. I'll just say that. So there are many companies which were launched on the back of this BNPL, right? And some of them have become unicorns also. But the fact is that it is a dead trap in the end, right? And in US we have seen it. India is just not ready. It's a dead trap. You buy now, pay later means what? I mean, in the end, you are caught in that whole vicious. You have to pay later, right? So that was another thing I feel one should be wary of. Coming from a payment space, I thought of these two.
You're absolutely right. I remember growing up saying, buy only what you can afford to buy, to pay for, and don't live on credit, right? And I think buy now, pay later just makes credit that much easier. That's all it does for us. So that's definitely the case. I think from going from debt traps and, things, for me, a lot of it is to do with the fact that people are very scared of tech. I keep hearing that, right? A lot of people say, oh God, it's technology and things like that. I think just a little bit more interest and a little bit more of deep diving into tech makes you realize that you can do so much more with tech. And the more I'm working with you guys and, studying tech, I'm realizing, hey, I can do music better, I can do photos better. And it's not about very complicated tech. It's also about simple tech, which I can use on an everyday basis. So for me, if one breaks the barrier of saying, I'm not in the space of tech, but is willing to be open and is willing to learn about it, you can pick up a lot of things and life becomes more fun. I think that's one thing about technology, which I think a lot of people don't realize. You can have fun with technology. And as a non-tech person, I always felt that, really, should I? I've always talked about off tech, for tech, by tech, right? But as I'm getting more and more into it, I realize you can actually enjoy so much more with tech.
So I'll tell you one thing. This is our belief, and I think Nilesh will also bear me out. Is that when we were growing up as kids, we used to have these very complicated sounding textbooks, about some topic, and we used to think that we are pretty idiotic because we don't understand it. Uh, Age has taught me that basically the authors were idiotic. They don't understand the topic. So, because the same thing written by another person who's crystal clear in their concepts will explain it to you like it's just everyday instances. So same with tech. If you are finding it difficult to understand something that someone says, be fearless in assuming that guy knows nothing. So you can be so if you can understand it, then that guy knows his stuff. Otherwise, he doesn't.
So I think that is such a fantastic point, and I keep telling my son, right? We talked about communications, and I told my son multiple times that a successful communication is not communicating your idea. The success of communication is, has the recipient got your idea and completely understood it, otherwise your communication has failed. And what you said is absolutely right. I mean, if I am not able to get something written by an author in a book, that doesn't mean completely my failure. And a classic example of that, and if you have not read it, you must read Richard Feynman, his book and his essays. So people used to say that Richard Feynman was one of the very few Nobel laureates who was a great teacher. And the idea was he used to simplify physics that everyone understood. And I have read some of those students telling that when you are in Feynman's class, everything is crystal clear. Everything, you suddenly start understanding the mysteries of universe like never before.
That's true. So I might just beg to differ with you a bit, Samir. And it's not that the guy doesn't know anything. It's just that maybe he doesn't know how to teach that to you. That's all. I'm just saying that there are some, and I've realized this, right? So it's just about the fact that I know my subject, but I'm not sure if I know how to teach it better. So what tends to happen, I think, in the world of technology is that a lot of people
Possibly
don't speak it in
They're
a
not great
language
communicators.
or don't give it to me with examples that I, as a non-tech person, can kind of align with. I remember my first conversation with the two of you. Remember, Nilesh, we were talking on blockchain.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember taking all of your blockchain stuff and saying we can connect it to fake news.
Yeah.
Right? And we never, I never came into the conversation. I came into the conversation thinking I'm going to get Gyan on blockchain. I did. Today, honestly, today I can speak blockchain without hesitating. But I also realize that if you speak it in a way or teach it in a way that a non-tech person understands it, I think you open up the ability of its uses in various forms also, which is a challenge today.
And wasn't that our core mantra, to make tech easy to understand and own hashtag fun tech, right?
So only one my anecdote, which hopefully will stay, is that this whole, like you tell your son, right, that communication doesn't end. The recipient should hear and understand. I've tried this thing a lot of times with my wife. So when she says something and she says, didn't you hear me? I said, see, communication is about knowing that the other person heard it. But somehow it doesn't fly the same way.
Well, all I can say is
I don't try that with my wife. That is what.
All I can say is you're a lucky man you aren't divorced as yet. By the way, that little slip that Samiran did about I hope it stays has happened because very often Samiran makes these completely politically incorrect statements which we edit out. Okay, and they're so incorrect that we can't even include them as bloopers. So every time he makes these snide little comments, it's because he has done something in the past. Okay, so let me put that out over there.
But I think before we kind of wrap up this section, Nilesh, I think the big mystery through season 1 and season 2 is that what is this creators of Unblocks? What are they Unboxing. Who are they? Because we kind of called unboxing trends, unboxing the blockchain. So I think maybe it's time to raise the curtain on unblock.
So yeah, time to raise curtains on unblocks. I think we debated about putting on the artwork also, whether we say creators of unblocks or not, but we went ahead with it. Unblocks is essentially a startup in a stealth mode. Not so stealth now, but it was a startup. It is a startup that we all are involved in, and it is a startup based in the blockchain space. The core idea started with this team that I'm working with. It's a global team based in France and India. Some developers were also in Ukraine, by the way, before the crisis. And what we started developing was a blockchain which was addressing the issues that are there with the current blockchain protocols, which is your energy efficiency, scalability, the whole idea, security. People talk of this whole, we talked about it, the 51% attack and all. So this blockchain is called Arc Ethic, ARCHETHIC, Arc Ethic. So Arch and Ethic. So arcethic.net is a public blockchain, and what we are trying to do is we have changed it at multiple levels, changed the protocol. Right, we have innovated every layer and tried to bring down the energy footprint. That was first, and second is provide a scale. So to put it in perspective, if today you talk of Bitcoin and Ethereum, you need specialist mining nodes. With Arc Ethic blockchain, you can mine it using a simple machine which has 8 GB RAM and a 256 GB hard disk kind of a setup.
Phone.
Yes,
it is.
actually with the phone. We even tried to put a node on the phone. So your node can be reduced to the size of a phone, and any normal machine can become a node in Arc Ethic. So that is how the energy consumption part goes down. And the second part is we have tried to innovate every layer. We talked about blockchain being a block of transactions, right? And we talked about the consensus in season 1. In those were some of the heavy topics that we covered. But the fact was that the power, the proof of work, POW, and the block size, all these are the things that make it the energy consumption goes up, and B, it is not scalable, right? So in a typical Bitcoin blockchain, it takes 10 minutes to actually finalize a block, right? And the transaction itself might easily take a couple of minutes, which is not acceptable in a typical e-commerce scenario. So we innovated multiple layers of the blockchain to make it scale. So Unblocks is essentially going to build, since it is energy efficient, it is going to build solutions on top of this Arc Ethic public blockchain. So
but in essence, what you're saying is that Unblocks will be able to do everything that was restricted by the inability of scale of existing blockchains can be built on Unblocks. I mean, email.
Absolutely. Stuff that you would not even dream building on the top of a blockchain because of the whole sustainability and scalability aspect. So that is the Unblocks curtain raiser, or Arc Ethic unblocked. Right.
So I think what is interesting is, like Pramod was saying in his episode, saying that you design for scale and then work. I think that's what we've really tried to do with the Arc Ethic Unblocks piece, which is designed for scale and then let it happen. So I think we've learned a little bit from our guests and also continued to improve upon the product that we are building. So I think it's an interesting thing. You must check us out. The website's still under construction, but it'll be up and running in a bit. Like we said, it's been in stealth mode and we're keeping it that way for a bit. So you might see it by the time we come back in season 3. We will let you know as soon as the website is up on Unblocks, but you can read up about Arc Ethic in the meantime. So I think that's something else we're doing. We've told you the company that we have, and we're now going to kind of, in the next segment, unveil what we plan for season 3, and we'd love to know what you think of it. So before we begin the segment 3, right, where we're going to talk about what we're going to do next week, let me ask you two very quick questions. What do you think is in common between statistics and bikinis? Okay, that's my first question to you. The second question to you is, what do you think is common between the Lido in France and technology? Okay. If I put these four words, these were the words that we beeped out of our episodes over the last 2 seasons. Try and figure out what the connections with these, and what do you think Samiran said that we had to beep these words out? Okay, I'm going to leave that to you.
Let me just correct to make it even more interesting. What is the connection between Lido, technology, and mythology?
Correct.
So since I am kind of a AI professional, it is my job to look for correlations. So let that be the context of your investigation.
So now that we've kind of put intrigue into it, let me tell you that intrigue in season 3 is going to be even more. Samiran, all yours.
So, as you must have imagined, and as we have also found out, even in the podcasting world, the top podcasts with the maximum listenership are actually all about crime and mystery and detective work, and nothing sells like crime. So we are in season 3. We are going to actually take a very very interesting look at what happens in that side of the world. Not to say that we are going to be giving away some technology to criminals or anything like that, but just kind of bring you, all that interesting stuff that goes on in that. I mean, Money Heist is a big hit. I mean, and not because for no reason. People love crime. So we're going to look at a little bit of that. We are obviously going to also then kind of pivot and see all the great things that are going on in the tech world, whether are categorized under the broad head of tech for good, but a lot of them are actually in the labs, literally. I know of when I was in Microsoft, they were doing this study to figure out how disease is spread by taking blood samples from mosquitoes, because mosquitoes go and bite people. So you can figure out if from the blood sample of the mosquito there is a disease. So, but none of these are scalable. So what's happening in that world? And I think as a general title, we've kind of also thought of our, we were very very inspired by the good, bad, and the ugly, but we couldn't, we didn't want to keep something ugly. So we thought we'll add fun and ugly, and we called it fugly. But then we realized fugly means really ugly.
Which is another word we are beeping out.
So now actually it's going to be broadly called the good, the bad, and the fun we have. So there you go.
So I think this whole first part that you mentioned, crime and all, and it is such an interesting field, and I'm sure many of our listeners would have seen the series called Mindhunter. I have also seen it. Like it was I don't know, it got cancelled, though it was very interesting. After 2 or 3 episodes it picks up, and the tech part of it was so important, and this was a kind of a serial which recognized the tech prowess of FBI, right? And I was amazed that the final case that they solve is a very well-known case about the Atlanta murders, right? And there were, I think, 29 murders of black kids, right? Wow. And I'm talking of this is 1960s or 70s, okay? And this FBI, so this whole crime profiling was first time it came into forefront, right? There was this guy who was trying to do this profiling, and it was a bang-on profile of a murderer that he had in mind, and they actually catch the murderer. But to date, I was then checking Wikipedia and searching about this Atlanta murders. To date, only 2 murders have been ascribed to it. 27 are still unsolved, or whatever, I think. So 2 are done and rest are unsolved. And even these 2 were purely solved on technology. There is no other link or evidence other than technology connecting this murderer to those 2. He never confessed, but he is still serving life. I think he's still alive. So tech and the whole crime and tech part is extremely interesting. I think we'll have to do a little bit of research, but I think it's a fantastic field to dwell into.
So much as we're saying crime and tech, it's not just crime and tech. I think what we're also going to understand is the dark web, which a lot of people are very interested in. We all read about it, we all watch it, but it kind of holds us in awe, saying, is this really happening? Is this not happening? Is this too much into the future? Is this now? And that's what we are going to explore as the first theme when we come back in season 3, which is the dark web, right? And everything that's happening in the dark web. Like Samiran said, the next theme is going to be tech for good. And I think I'm hoping that's our opportunity to talk about technology that is being developed in India for good, for scale, for different things. So that's going to be our second theme. And we promise you the third theme in the third season is going to be even more exciting. And we will let you know what that theme is as we go along, right?
So I have to kind of give you a couple of stories here about this bad and good. So if you follow TV, the CSI was a big favorite, continues to be.
Correct.
And it's actually really based on pure science and investigation, whether you call it tech or not. And so was Numbers. There was another series where
that was brilliant.
So there is this FBI agent who takes the help of his brother, who's a math professor, to solve crime. And I remember one specific case because I very coincidentally happened to hear the lecture of the professor who kind of the theory. So it was based on some kind of a proximity theory on which the US Army use is that by knowing where IEDs are exploded, how can you find where IED deposits are kept? And this was back in the Afghanistan Iraq days. So this guy had developed this algorithm that if there is an IED explosion in X, Y, Z place, then within this perimeter, there has to be an IED stockpile, and that's how they used to go and investigate. And then it was used in Numbers, the serial, and I heard that lecture. So then I realized that how closely these two things were tied, and it's just fascinating if you keep your mind open to see. The other one for Tech for Good is like my favorite wildlife story about snow leopards is that the Snow Leopard Foundation, they spent years putting camera traps along the Himalayas to track snow leopards, and I think they got millions and millions of hours of footage, but they were never able to go through it because how do you go through all of that? And if you see any YouTube video, you realize you can't make them out from the foliage. Then they started using machine learning and all, and once they started doing that, they were actually able to separate the foliage from the snow leopard, and then they say, okay, there is a snow leopard, there's a snow leopard. So now the next phase of the study is, are we seeing the same snow leopard all the time, or is it a different snow leopard? So now they're getting into feature recognition. So if you look at your dog for hours and hours, you'll realize that it looks different from the other dogs. So same with snow leopards, I suppose. So I think that is, and I think they're using that for wildlife conservation, for elephants, whales, stuff happening in climate change. People are using that to, I think we talked about it in our Air Force lecture where we talked about how dismantled and destroyed hard disks and phones can be, data from it can be found, and terrorism activity. So this is tons of stuff. So there is the evil of tech, and then there is the investigation of tech, and then there is all the good of tech, and then there is Sheetal's surprise tech that we will
surprise tech we will talk about. We won't reveal now. No, Tech for Good, I think, that's a very good point. I think Tech for Good also holds a lot of stuff. I was just as a, not sure whether we'll cover it or not, but just as a teaser, I think a lot of stuff is happening in this whole green, the environment part of it. Like you mentioned, the wildlife. Supply chains are one of the most, energy non-efficient kind of systems today, and tech is now being used to figure out what is the green supply chain. And it was very interesting. I never thought about it in that way, and I came across a project which is kind of under works in Europe, whereby they are trying to see the energy footprint of a supply chain and now you're looking at each and every aspect of figuring out how you can make it green. So one aspect, and it's complex, right? Because in supply chain there are multiple things. You can make it green by ensuring that it comes through the most basic stuff is that it should come through the shortest channel, right? So you are burning least amount of fuel. But then there are so many aspects whereby how do you stack it, what is the weight, make it as efficient as possible, use the whole maritime stuff, right? Are you using the natural winds for movement? And so it's a fantastic endeavor. They are trying to first you have to calculate, right? So what is the energy footprint of a supply chain, and then you start addressing each and every aspect to create a kind of a green supply chain. So I don't think that kind of stuff would be possible without technology and AI and computational ability, honestly. So yeah, a lot of work and interesting stuff to talk about in Tech Forward, honestly.
Absolutely. And I must admit that, while we were writing cases for NASSCOM, we found that there are so many young people in India who are creating such amazing technology, whether it's in the space of education, whether it's in the space of healthcare. Things that you just sit in back and say, why didn't I think about it? That kind of technology is being developed by really young people. And I'm glad to hear they're not all leaving the country and going away. They're actually building it here, seeing the opportunities, and of course, therefore, our conversation on many, many unicorns which are coming up in this country. So I think that's going to be fun. And the third one, I promise you, is a surprise. It is going to be something that is going to shock you. So we will come back with that. So with that, we're going to take a break from Three Techies Banter. We're going to put our heads down, put our heads together, and design the season 3. Till then, if you've enjoyed our banter, if you've liked what we've done for 2 seasons, do rate, rank, review our podcast. We're available on every podcast platform. If you're on Apple Podcasts, don't forget to review our podcast. It helps us grow. But more than anything else, this is the first time we are experimenting with video, and therefore we would love to get your feedback to say, should we continue with video, or are you happier listening to us just as podcasters? Thank you so much, and see you in season 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.